a black storm coming. See the lightning strike. Black people rising.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Umoja Circle. My name is Keith Smokey Johnson, and with me to my left here is my Rafiki or friend in the Kiswahili language, Brother Derek Williams. This is, for those of you who are new to the Umoja Circle, we're an African-centered talk show, and the purpose of the Umoja Circle is to correct errors where errors are found and to introduce facts where we find that so many people are working on fiction. And we also believe that only through dialogue can there actually be a true shift in consciousness. And one of the things that we found, we like to introduce books and other concepts from people who do the scholarship. No sense reinventing the wheel. And the book that we are basing our current discussion on is a book that was written by this sister right here. Dr. Isabel Wilkerson. She's a Pulitzer Prize winner. First of all, she got the Pulitzer Prize in 1994 for some work she did from when she was there at the Chicago Times. She teaches in places like Harvard and other great universities. She is the author of another book that I first was introduced to her a bit. It was a number one best-selling book, The Warmth of Many Suns. And this book, I'm going to show you, it's called Caste, The Origins of Our Discontent, which is the interesting way she puts it. And what she's talking about is the caste system that when she started, what started her on this journey to deal with this book was the fact that what happened in Charlottesville influenced her, where she saw the confluence of the Confederate flags and the Nazi flags, and she was wondering why these two philosophic differences were coming together. And she realized that she needed to do some research on it, and that set her on her journey in which she discovered certain new things. And one of the profound things that she started doing her research was that she went to India, she studied in Berlin, and she studied here in America, and she saw similarities.
Yeah.
And the oldest of the three type of hierarchical systems she found were pretty much tied together, which was profound to her. And that's what's in this book. Also, there's a quote that I want you to read here, that we'll put it up on the screen, okay? You know, for her, this thing that she called a caste system is an arbitrary and punitive ranking of humans' values that defines inferior and superior groups, you know? She focuses on the caste system, but only gives a sustained attention to the race-based caste pyramid of the United States. And I'll let you read the rest of it. Okay, like you see that Nazi Germany and India were the other two systems of hierarchy that she mentions in the book, but she focuses on the caste system here in America. Brother Williams?
Yes, and how she uses that as the weaving foundation, shows the similarity, I think is key. And by understanding one, you almost automatically understand the other, because you see the intricate tie. The symbols, the Nazi symbol, the Confederate flag, embodies this distinct differentiation between groups of people.
One group is better than the other group.
And of course, the flags are the lightning rod, the short-term way of getting there so quickly in terms of how the thought embodies the denunciation of one group over another.
And we must remember that these things that the original generation do is arbitrary.
Yes,
It had nothing to do
Caprice, yes.
with biological or some kind of truth. It was a system that was established for America. The hierarchical system, the English who founded this country, whose colonies is the forefathers of this American system, they wanted to be on the top of the food chain.
Yes.
And also, it was purely for economic reasons.
Economic reasons, that's
okay?
right.
You had to, when you had tobacco, when you had sugar cane, sugar was the first in the early 1500s and 1400s, late 1400s, was the dominant product, okay? It was the oil of that time.
Yes.
Then you had cotton later on, and tobacco and cotton and those things. But these were gang labor-intensive crops. Not only that, they also mess with the soil. They absorb a lot of the nutrients, so the soil so they got to find more and more land.
Yes.
And so you have to have a system put in place where you have labor that can produce this crop for economic reasons. That
Yes.
became a worldwide phenomenon
Yes.
in the last 400, 500 years.
Yes.
And that was the impetus of this caste system, because
Yes.
you had to justify keeping people that you kidnapped from a continent and bring them over here to force labor.
Right, without really talking about the true reason.
Yeah.
It was done not only incrementally, but the intentionality of it is what we often forget. Because when we talk about slavery, we immediately want to reduce that situation to a moral wrong. But we must also keep in mind it was an economic wrong, but it was economically undergirded by creating this system. And I think that's very crucial, because when you think about the 256 years and then another 100, 150, you realize how encased that system is. You also realize the caste that undergirded all of this.
All of that, exactly.
And why they needed to have a hierarchical plane to make it just an automatic way, almost as simple as breathing air each day. And to add insult to injury, we know the effectiveness of this because the government supported it by writing laws, the black codes, the slave codes, where they defined something as minute as looking out of the same window as somebody white. So this was not done just haphazardly. It was scientifically approached, so to speak, to make sure that this caste system not only stayed in place, but the rigid behavior was well established by everyone in the society, whether or not you own slaves or not. And this is something that I think America, when I say America, us, we must include as we begin to ask the question, what is the reconciliation? What are the solutions? Well, we have to address caste and we have to address race and see how they're intricately tied.
And like I said in the previous show, that this book is like an X-ray film that you put up to the light.
Yes.
To see that structure.
Yes.
Okay? This illuminates the bones
of
the United States
Absolutely.
of America. And when you look at the bone, you see this structure that we call a hierarchical caste system. Yeah. If you think that we're talking hyperbole, we got a little video of a speech that was done by Martin Luther King in 1965 about something that happened to him when he went to India in a couple of years earlier in 1959. Watch.
When I was in India, one afternoon I went down to speak in the southern part of India in a school that was attended by and large by young boys and girls who were the children of former untouchables. And I remember that afternoon that the principal got up to introduce me. And as he came to the end of his introduction, he said, "I would like to present to you a fellow untouchable from the United States of America." And for the moment I was peeved, I was shocked that I would be introduced as an untouchable. But pretty soon my mind ran back across to America. And I started thinking about the fact that there were so many places that I couldn't go because of the color of my skin. I started thinking about the fact that my 20 million brothers and sisters in the Negro community of America are still at the bottom of the economic ladder, deprived of adequate housing conditions, unable to live in numerous neighborhoods because of the color of their skin. I started thinking about the fact that my little children were still judged on the basis of the color of their skin rather than the content of their character. And I had to say to myself, I am an untouchable, and every Negro in the United States is an untouchable. And segregation is evil and sinful because it stigmatizes the segregated as an untouchable in a caste system. And this is why I'm convinced that we have a moral edict, a moral mandate to work to get rid of this unjust and evil system. And we must make it clear all over America that we are through with segregation now, henceforth, and forevermore, if the American dream is to be a reality.
Now that we're back from that film, he was the same effect when you read this book is the kind of effect that he had when he was first called an untouchable, a fellow untouchable, when he was introduced by that principal in Trevedium, the city that he was taken to meet untouchables. He came with, even though he didn't connect the dots until that this is a worldwide phenomenon. And this is nothing new. What was going on in India for 2,000 to 3,000 years was what was established here in America for the economic purpose. And all the mythologies about who we are and how people have visceral respect affects when they come in contact with us. Because the caste system in India is based on two principles. You have the purity and you have the contamination. And you don't want that thing that you could consider outside the caste to contaminate your purity. How many times you've heard in America people talking about, the white purity, or the miscegenation laws where you don't want a black person to marry a white person.
Came out of the same concept.
That's part of a caste system. And if you don't recognize that in America, it doesn't matter, what you say or do or ignore.
Well said, Smokey.
You got to deal with that. And another way she brought this home was when she talked about that house. You remember what she said?
Yeah,
you are an entrepreneur. You own some property and homes. And as a person that owns a house, even if it's 20 years ago, or 20 years old, 30 years old, or 256 years ago, this is the house that we invited. And the reason I brought that up, because I always said that too. And she brought it up in the book. And it just kind of made me realize that metaphor is a great metaphor.
Absolutely.
When you come across a white person who sometimes say, I'm sure you said
I had nothing to do with it.
Yeah, I had nothing to do with that. My parents came through Ellis Island. We didn't own slaves, and yada, 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 all that. You hear that all the time. You hear it to this day, whenever one of the fixtures of the houses flare up into some kind of racial incident, right? And the best way to explain is when you move into an older house, you don't walk in there and expecting to not to have issues.
That's right.
When you inherited a house
You
that is
inherit
old,
all the problems that come
all
along
the
with it.
problems, and most of the problems are hidden, right? The
Yes.
frayed wiring, the joists, that's underneath the underlying flooring. I'm sure you had to go behind walls to
Every
fix
day.
as a homeowner.
Yeah.
You had to deal that with that
Every day.
Every day.
I think that's an excellent analogy, Smokey, and I think not only is it analogous to our situation, but when you take it a step further and ask the question, when you don't address these issues, what happens to the house? Okay, well, it further deteriorates.
Exactly.
The roof can fall in on you, and it doesn't matter who bought the house. You inherited, and you have the responsibility,
Exactly.
the moral and the obligation to fix it.
Fix the house.
And so we don't get out of this thing that easy by saying, I wasn't there, I didn't do it. But you're benefiting by those
You're in
who
the
set
house
this structure
now.
into motion.
Exactly.
And for us to have a serious conversation around race or reconciliation, whatever you want to call it, we have to look at our foundation and system from that standpoint. And you become very accommodational, you become very used to the psychological warmth of feeling that you're a ratchet above another group of people. Because now you can justify all of your failures. You can justify, well, I didn't accomplish this because of that group over there. And that animosity is constantly fed, and you see it in conversations, and you see it in all of the people systems. And so when we talk about caste, we must apply caste to all of the people systems. I'm talking about politics. I'm talking about law. I'm talking about entertainment. I'm talking about medicine. I'm talking about marriage. I'm talking about sex. And so you don't have the privilege of taking this and applying it to one just area, okay? It has affected every aspect of our life.
Yeah, add healthcare, there are a lot of people in this house called America that is not fair across the board. It doesn't work because the structure, the caste system, said that somehow people that look like us are not to benefit from that. It's written in the laws. In fact, in the Constitution, that people, Republican conservatives who are in office today talk about original intent of the founding fathers, which means the people who wrote the Constitution. Well, heck, they were colonizers who took land from the Indians, Native people, excuse me, Native Americans, and also they said that we were 3/5 of a human being.
Yeah.
So if the original, so when you listen to politicians today talk about, or Supreme Court judges, Alito, who said about he making decisions because the Constitution, he goes by the original intent of the Constitution. He's going to take rights away from female reproductive rights. You got to think about it.
Yes,
original intent?
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
When that thing was ratified in 1789, the Constitution, we were not even considered human beings. We were considered property.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the one thing I think Sister Wilkerson does that I think is very essential is we talk about how can this kind of thing continue to exist and to sustain itself. But the changing demographics in America are probably the primary reason that you see the tremendous kickback that is taking place. What, the year 2045 or whatever?
2042, in 2008, the people who did the census said that the growth of the population, based on their data, shows that white America, which has been the dominant group for 400 years, will be secondary to all these brown people that will be here by the year 2042. So you want to understand why you hearing all kinds of crazy stuff from the conservatives?
It's a kickback. It's a kickback, and it's a very scary time for our white population because it is the first time in history that a country that started off being the dominant group, is now having to take a secondary or tertiary position in terms of a population.
And those laws that made it possible to, in the last 60 years, basically, because prior to between the 1960s, when we started having the civil rights movement, where we baby boomers insisted that you had black studies in colleges and universities all across the country, where we started knowing about ourselves, and you had Native Americans' rights, and all these people who were outcast in this caste system, from 1619 to the 1960s, where the dominant group was white. If you look at Make America Great Again, go back to the 50s, that's when they still had legal rights to say, you can't sit at that counter. You can't go into this theater. You got to go to the back.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
But since 64, we could go right up front, and we could have contracts and do all that. Then you tie that to the population growth.
Well, those privileges are threatened and endangered. And as I said in the previous program, many of my race relations students, their primary fear, without any justification, but simply by occupying that position for so many years, their primary fear is that you will do to us what we did to you.
And that's full circle to what he started with this concept at the beginning of the first show, that this is that inner fear.
Yes.
Because you claim ignorance, or people claim, well, I don't know what's the problem, with black people today. Well, do you want to live in our shoes? A good example to tell you how powerful these psychological effect on brothers and sisters and white America. In 1944, in Columbus, Ohio, it was a year before the end of World War II, the school system there put on one of the essay contests to see who could write the best essay in the system. 16-year-old black young lady won it, and she won it in using just one sentence. She won an essay contest using one sentence. The question was, what kind of punishment should we do to Hitler? Now, this is 1944, year before he killed himself. But that was the question. And her one sentence answer was, if you could make him black and have him live in America. I'm serious. This was her. It's in the book here.
Yeah.
That's where I got this story.
Yeah.
That was a profound thought from a young black girl, 16-year-old, who won an essay contest with one sentence that blew people away.
Yeah.
Again, caste system.
Yes.
If you could make him black and have him live in America, will be punishment enough for Hitler.
Wow. Wow. Well, I believe that the book allows us to have additional information and analysis for encouraging conversation and intervention for our future generation. Without the consideration of caste, I mean, just routinely in the most everyday interaction, if I might just share a little quick example that occurred, my grandson shared with me an incident that happened at work very recently on his new job. Mm-hmm. I guess the rule was that you can't use your cell phone. Well, that's like telling a young person that you can't
breathe.
You can't breathe. So it's going to take some. It's going to take some encouragement and explanation. Not just merely you can't use your telephone, but why perhaps you can't use your telephone, because it's a distraction, et cetera, et cetera. And anyway, he got caught using his telephone, and he said he used it because everyone around him was answering their texts, and so he decided, well, I'm going to answer my text. And so he did, and the supervisor told him, put your phone away. And he looked at the supervisor. He didn't say anything. And he shut the phone down. But the look that he gave the supervisor, according to the supervisor, was one of disrespect. And he told him, you're out of here. And so, of course, he was very angered by the action because he couldn't understand why he had been chosen to be reprimanded, while all of his other colleagues, the other colleagues fit in a different caste system.
Yeah,
okay,
and that's a good
so
point.
many of us would attribute that to race, and I'm suggesting that it can be race and caste. But you can see every day an interactive example of this occurs in our daily life, in organizations, in the hospitals, with the doctors, with the nurse.
Hey,
why I was standing here first? Why are you waiting on her? You know, you thanked me, but you didn't. You thanked her, but you didn't thank me. These behaviors are attributed to feeling that those are caste behaviors.
Exactly.
Yeah. Why should I thank you? You're just an undergraduate.
How dare you talk to me? You see it in the movies when these videos of how a police officer approaches a black teenager.
That's probably the best example.
And how it escalates because he is conditioned in this caste system from the time he's a child.
Yes.
So when I hear all these so-called experts say,
and he's a keeper of the caste system.
Yeah, and you hear these people who don't have a clue, who are supposed to have been educated, who say they just need training. Yeah. No, when you see a caste, it's like it's so ingrained in your culture and your psychology. You unconsciously have a visceral response. Yeah. That's why it could be dangerous for us to be stopped by a police stop.
Yes.
Or shot because we made a move.
Yes.
That's how you were conditioned to look at somebody in another caste.
Yes.
And the caste is mythological, it's lies, but in order to establish this structure called America, where you had enslavement for hundreds of years, and then 100 years of apartheid, you're going to have a mental way of looking at a caste system just the way they do in India.
And the one final thing I think along that line that we must recognize and accept is that there is a two-way impact on the perpetrator and the victim.
Of course.
It reinforces for the person who is in the upper caste, that's how it's supposed to be. And for the person that's in the lower caste system, it reinforces, this is how I'm supposed to interact. So we have a choice. Either go with the flow or stand and point out this inappropriate behavior.
The struggle continues until we understand this truth. And you got to understand one quick thing, that the Nazis looked to America when they established their Nuremberg laws that put people in those ovens.
Yes.
We were the model.
Yes.
The miscegenation laws and all that stuff that we had long before Hitler.
Yes.
They looked at us.
Because we had adjudicated that and integrated it as part of our system.
For hundreds of years.
System,
since 1619. So until next time, I hope you got something out of this. And look at this. This is the book that you need to read. So peace, Hotep, bye-bye.